Well, thank you, everyone. I don't have slides either. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a series of 10 reflections about what we've heard the last couple days and things that I've learned over the years implementing enterprise scheduling systems. I'd like to start with Columbus. So Columbus came to America with 3 boats. Actually, no, we're going to do the Columbus, Ohio. So there was a couple of things that we learned in doing that implementation. We had a great experience working with Dr. Davies and team. And what I'd like to start with is that we found that moving from clinic or grid scheduling to resource-based scheduling can be a really big success. Overall, we felt like the project went really well, and to highlight a couple of key things, people really did appreciate being able to do auto-scheduling, recur-based scheduling, self-service reporting, and then the veterans also started doing some of their own scheduling. There were certainly some hurdles there in terms of doing that, and I think as you have more and more tools that will be available for veterans within their portal, that'll be a really big thing for them. A couple things that were hard. One of the biggest things that was really difficult was connecting to the other VA systems. One thing that we learned, even just in working with the single site, is that there's lots of localization with the systems across the VA. So it's not a situation where when you go to one VISN or one part of the organization and get connected, that suddenly you're now connected and you can just kind of stamp that out to every other site. You have to build into your install process the time and energy that's going to be needed to get connected to the local systems. Along the way, we also learned that it makes sense that as you're doing this mapping, so as you go from a grid or a clinic-based scheduling model to a resource-based scheduling model, that as you're building out those resources to do the template building at the same time. I think, we started off with a process where we were doing resource building first, then doing template building, and really when we started marrying the two, that really helped a lot. One thing that's important in these types of implementations, and we certainly learned a lot from working with Kaiser, was that we need to think nationally while working locally. When we started working with Kaiser many years ago, I think it was 2003, Kaiser said the same thing that the VA said, which is that each of our sites is different. Each of our sites is different from all of our other sites. They would say the words, if you've gone to one Kaiser site, you've gone to one Kaiser site. Now, if you look at Kaiser, they really do work as a overall organization, even across all of their different regions. And if you talk to them about their experience with the implementation, one of the things that they'll talk about is that they wish they had done even more to standardize things at a national level, because then it made it easier for them to manage things going forward. Every local standardization that you do ends up having a cost on an ongoing basis. So while you're going to be rolling out the scheduling system site by site or part by part of the VA, it's really important to get to the point where you've done things like standardization of procedures, of visit types, as you're doing that, so that then you can really start to manage, report, analyze information at a national level. My fifth point is that systems are changing more quickly than ever before. These are not the days where, our scheduling system evolves very, very rapidly from release to release, from year to year. So when you're doing an implementation that's 3, 4, 5, 10 years long, you have to do updates to the existing sites as you're going. You can't have a situation where you say, we're going to stop all updating to existing sites until we roll out to the whole country, because then a lot of the country is using a system that is totally antiquated and out of date by the time you get to the end of the process. I would also highlight that we need to think about these implementations more like we think about the apps on our phone. I don't mean to oversimplify things, but increasingly at Epic we've gone to a process where we turn new features on automatically. We call it on by default or always on. And I'm assuming Cerner's doing the same sorts of things where in order to roll out functionality more quickly to our sites, we immediately make it available within the system instead of somebody having to go out and do a lot of configuration and building. And so I think the VA needs to think very seriously about how you're going to be adaptive and optimized during the process versus saying, we're going to build it this way, and then everyone's going to get that, and then we'll come back and do an update 10 years later or 5 years later. It's just, in the modern world, that's not going to work well. My sixth point is that the good news is that you've purchased an integrated system, meaning that your scheduling system and your clinical system are one system. And that should be key to everything that you're thinking about, even as you're rolling out scheduling first. For us at our large enterprise sites, the clinical system really drives our scheduling process, and we use clinical information throughout the whole scheduling workflow. When we talk about things like decision trees, we're actually using those decision trees to look at information in the patient's record, whether they have implants of certain types, whether they have certain history, whether they've had certain labs done, what would be the pre-procedure work that is needed, to then drive what we end up scheduling. And I've heard a lot over the last couple of days about the request process and the referral process. And by its nature, in an integrated clinical system, that needs to be fully integrated with the scheduling process. So when the physician places the order, that order then contains a lot of the knowledge that needs to drive the scheduling process, and hopefully a lot of that isn't stuff that needs to be taught to the individual scheduler, but that just the scheduling system can take advantage of during the process. The seventh thing that I was going to highlight is that both Cerner and Epic have implemented in many large organizations, not only in the United States, but all around the world. So we've worked with government organizations in the Middle East, in the Nordic countries. And so we have a lot of experience creating systems that can be used used in many different scenarios. So I would warn you against doing a lot of customization specific to the VA. In the end, while that might solve some short-term problem, in the end what it'll mean is that you are kind of moving off on a divergent path from everyone else, and you won't be able to take advantage of all the work that they do. So you heard Mayo talk about yesterday that they had some kind of secret sauce, some special stuff that they were doing around decision trees that our other customers hadn't done at that point. But they worked with us to design and develop that into our base system, so it became a part of Cadence and became a part of Epic, and now all of our other customers take advantage of it. And so shy away from doing stuff that is custom or specific to the VA unless it's going to become a part of Cerner's base product, which then can be shared with everyone else. Number 8 is plan for the future. The future doesn't obviously look like it does today. The future is a couple of things. One is the future is patients doing their own scheduling. When we built our decision trees, for example, into the system, we also built them into our MyChart app. So we think of that the future of scheduling is really patients doing it themselves. We talked yesterday about no-shows. Interestingly, we have done a little bit of research on this, and not only do patients that use MyChart, our patient portal, are less likely to no-show, but patients that book their own appointments within MyChart are less likely to no-show for those appointments. And the reason being is that you get to pick your own times and slots. We all know there's a huge difference in terms of whether you're booking a flight, whether you're booking an appointment, to be able to see the slots are available and then to figure out what's going to work best with your calendar rather than have somebody walk you through that over the phone. And so you really need to be thinking about a world where patients are doing the scheduling. The other thing is, this is my personal opinion, but I think the idea of visit type-based scheduling is going to go away in the next few years. We're going to be moving towards symptom-based scheduling. Patients don't actually call in and say, I want an office visit, I want a consult. What they call in is with a problem, and then that problem needs to deliver them to the right path. And that means that doing one of the great things about the VA is all the work that you're doing on virtual care. And so helping patients navigate based on a particular symptom, is the right thing for this rash, for example, is it an e-visit, which is asynchronous? Is it a video visit where I have immediate contact with the physician, or do I actually need to go in, and should I go into an urgent care or into the clinic? So helping patients navigate through venues of care is very important. Number 9 is I'd like to highlight something that Desiree commented on, which is I spent the last couple days at the CCF Patient Empathy Conference, and one of the things that was really focused on and highlighted there is this concept of know me as a patient. There's lots of easy things that we can do, whether it's just providing messages or directing patients to the right physicians, to make people feel like you know who they are and that their conditions, their issues are being respected, whether it's using the right pronoun with patients, using their preferred name, or whether it's doing more complicated stuff like identifying that this patient shouldn't see this particular physician or that this patient should go to a particular venue of care. Very critical for the future of scheduling. And then I'd like to end number 10 with dispelling a myth. Epic did not start as a billing system, nor did Cerner. I hear this regularly that EHR vendors started as billing systems. We actually started as a system for managing clinical data and doing research. We work with doctors every day for every piece of development that we're doing and spend hundreds of hours doing usability studies, time motion studies, watching doctors actually use the system. Our developers are all required to go out on immersions and spend time with physicians. So we very much work with doctors in the development of our systems. Thank you.